don't have time for this. Stop. Then go to sleep. I don't have time for this. No. Hello, everybody. Okay, let me just get to my video here. Can everyone see me? Yes? No?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so we get some. There you are. You say, yeah, give a thumbs up. There you go. Okay, let's see who we are waiting for. Let's see who we are all waiting for. Pierre, stay down here. Oh, wait just a few more minutes here. Stay down here. Hey, stay down here, Pierce. Don't. Come on. I know, but. Exactly. Cody, what have you been up to, dude?
I'm trying to build a computer, so I'm looking at parts right now.
People say that, like when people say they're buying parts, like, does it mean like they're doing everything from like every wire, or you're just buying like chunks of it and you're gonna put the chunks together? Is that what people mean?
Yeah, I think there's like pre-built computers that have everything all put together, all set up, and
So let me
I
ask
don't
you
know. I think
this.
it's very easy to break it. That's why.
Well, let me ask you this, because I've never done this, but I'm always curious about the world. What is it about the computers that the dummies like myself just buy? Like, what is it that they're not getting for you that you would really want? You know what I mean? Like, what is
Yeah,
it about an off-the-shelf one that's not good enough for you?
it's
Why are
not
you
that
being so...
it's not that those are bad computers. I think
Yeah.
there definitely are bad ones out there, but I play video games and I sometimes do video editing and photo editing rarely. So,
well, see, I do that. I do edit videos and I do render like these like 2-hour lectures. I do that.
But I would say that the
But
videos that you do don't require like high quality like pixel density, and I think that
no, they
like
do not.
a better computer, well, more so a better graphics card in a computer can better handle higher resolution data. So
do I want to ask what you're making movies of or for, or?
Oh, it's like that's like very rare, but I'd like my computer to be able to handle it is the thing.
Wait, Cody, weren't you telling me you wanted to like pilot a drone or something?
Yeah, I have a drone and I don't fly it as often as I should.
But you could use the high editing video for that,
yeah,
like the high.
I definitely can. I've done like a couple videos with the drone footage and on my MacBook, and like that's perfectly capable of handling it. But for the PC that I'm building, it's mostly just for video games, and they're getting pretty demanding now.
Huh. Well, I just got my Wii up and running, and I just bought Call of Duty 3, and
for the Wii?
Yeah, for the Wii. Yeah, I got my Wii because my son was really asking me for a Nintendo Switch, and I'm like, dude, I'm a state employee. I don't got that kind of cash.
Wait,
So
what?
before my wife and I got married, one of our earlier joint purchase, we had two early purchases before we were married. We bought a portable vacuum, which is still running, not that well, but still running, and we bought a Nintendo Wii, which still works. So I've been playing lots of Mario Kart, Super Mario Brothers, Wii Sports, Call of Duty 3. Yeah, dude, games are super cheap.
Yeah, on the Wii especially.
Yeah, I can buy all the accessories. I mean, I had Mario Kart at one point, but I couldn't find it. But I just went on eBay and I bought the game for $5.
Oh, that is super cheap.
So why even look around in my house if it's only $5?
I mean, okay, here's a pitch for you on other games. Like, I'd say now companies are moving into the free to play, but you pay to be good at, or pay to have a better experience at sometimes.
Yeah.
So like most of the modern titles out there that you hear in the mainstream, like the newest Call of Duty out there, is a free to play for the most part. So Apex is another popular one, is also free to play.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a bunch of free to play options out there. Like, yeah.
And a lot of that's on Steam, or is that on?
Mostly Steam. Yeah. But so you can definitely just invest in a good computer, get free games.
But see, I'd already have to be at that, right? I just had the Wii sitting under my mother-in-law's bed. So all I had to do is get that bad boy out from under the bed.
Yeah.
Professor will start a Kickstarter for you to raise money to buy either a gaming PC or a console.
Exactly. Yeah.
He needs the help.
I support it.
Yeah.
I'm like listening to this conversation. I'm like, oh gosh.
If I was wearing I could do this, right? I could do the thing like where I like put my like pockets out or something like that in my shorts. Actually, what is it? Tomorrow is payday, so this is a perfect day to ask.
I agree with that. Switch.
Yeah, there we go. Switch for me. That's right. Yeah, for one of the settings at least.
This is like trying to convince you to buy a new car. When your car was catching on fire.
You know what though? Yeah, but I don't own it now. Now Will's brother's got it, and it turns out it's in its prime.
No. Wait, it's still running?
Yeah, that's what Will said. His brother's driving it, and I mean, Will's brother's being a good teenager with it, right? Okay, let's see here. Let's start. I just have a fan blowing on me. Is the fan noise too much for anyone? It's all good. Yes, good. Okay. Okay, so let me start with logistics, and then we'll go from there. We are all good for having Bloomberg up and running next week. Everything is installed. Everything is taken care of. We're just waiting for Bloomberg to deploy the new system on Monday. And it's a system that will allow you to use your own computer. I'll give you the login instructions, and I'll make a little video of how to do it. In this course, Elijah and Cody are actually kind of our Bloomberg help desk. I guess we're going to call it a help desk until we can actually open up the lab. They're going to be on our help desk, so they'll be able to kind of walk you through things, and I'll be able to walk you through some things as well. But basically, we don't have that many restrictions in its use, except that no more than 9 people can be using it at the same time. So that would be a great problem if we end up having that problem. But if we do, we can try to allocate use and just say, A's through L's use it between midnight and noon, or, we'll figure it out. I'm not too concerned about that. Let's see, what else? So the way that we'll do that is in the La Lima site. Let me go to... I know I need to share this here. But let me just go to La Lima. really quick. Can someone say, do you see the La Lima screen right now or no?
No.
Yes. No. Okay. So let me try doing it this way. What about now? Yes? Okay, perfect. Okay, so all of you should be familiar with our site here. We are intermediate macro. So what you would see here, I'm doing two things now. Right now I'm working on our homework assignments, what we had agreed to last week, unless I've hit my head and I don't remember things accurately, that we wanted more in favor of having small weekly assignments rather than big problem sets, and that they would lead up to the exams. Is that correct for everyone, I hope? Yes? Yes, I thought that was where we were all at. So what that means is I'm about halfway through. With that said, sorry, two people are waiting to enter the room. With that said, what I'm working on right now are these kinds of homework assignments. So I'll start to link them to each chapter. It'll be pretty simple. You'll be able to do them multiple times to get 100% scores. They'll just have a due date before the exam. And then since we're kind of focusing a little bit more on multiple choice questions for these homework assignments, just because of COVID, I suspect the exam might be a little bit more multiple choice centric than typically is the case. Not exactly my choice, but I think it's just the reality of the world. There's a part of me that really wants to think that in the middle of September we will all be back. But there's another part of me which just says that it's just probably not going to happen, or not happen at my pace. So we'll just try to adjust, I guess. Although I don't know about anyone else in this course, just in general, but I'm actually kind of really getting sick of people saying like the new normal or using COVID as an excuse for everything. It reminds me of my long time ago, like 20 years ago, there was like this fire at my grandfather's house. You know, nothing too serious, but he used it as the perfect excuse for when he lost anything, like even going forward, right? So like, 5 years later, he would have lost like an insurance claim, be like, oh, I burned in the fire, right? So it feels like sometimes everyone's using COVID as the perfect excuse for everything. Okay, so you're going to start to see tests and quizzes. You're going to start to see this in topics. So if I go to topics here, this is where you're going to really start seeing the action now. So we are working on introduction today, basically review from principles of macro. And right now at this point, there's only one thing, which is the slides that I'm going to talk about today. After this class is done, I'll post this Zoom video where I'm talking about these slides. And then I'll also post the homework assignment. And so you can expect those three things to exist for every topic that we talk about: slides, the video where we talk about the slides, and the homework assignment. So that standard way should exist for all of these topics. So hopefully that's clear. Oh, Pierce, come here, buddy. Hey, come here. Is it broken? Here. Yeah, look at that. Yeah. Okay. Hey, come up here. Oh, here, I'll put something on for you. Sorry, I'm multitasking here. It's unfortunate our class time because it's also the same as my older son's piano time, and today it's also the same as my wife's birthday, so I'm really multitasking. Well, actually, her birthday didn't take very much on my schedule. But, it's like me using COVID as an excuse. Okay, let's go. Okay, here's what I want to do. So I want to start off. Everyone can see this graph. Is that correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Making sure. Okay, good. Okay. So today is the introduction. Basically, anything you would have remembered or forgotten from Principles of Macro is what we're going to be doing today. To help you a little bit further, I'm going to repost, for those of you who had me, especially for principles, you would know I make lots of little videos for my students. I'm going to repost those as well. That's completely and totally optional. It just always kind of dependent on how little or how much you remember from your principles days. You know, it's right. It depends on who you had principles with. It depends on what your life circumstances were when you were taking it. So there's a whole bunch of factors that could affect how much you actually remember. But today, the focus is on three things. The three big things that macroeconomists care about. And I, much more so than a microeconomist, am a macroeconomist. We care about three things. We care about production, which is measured by the acronym of GDP. We care about inflation, which is typically measured with the acronym of CPI, standing for Consumer Price Index. And we care about unemployment, which we usually measure with a statistic called U3, which is our unemployment figure. So just to start off today's lecture, I just want to kind of give us a lay of the land of what these statistics look like. So even outside of Bloomberg, which has excellent economic data, excellent economic data, they still get their economic data from the government. And the best source of data from the government is the St. Louis Fed. Each of the Federal Reserve district banks specialize in one thing. So for instance, San Francisco makes this like monetary policy game. The Atlanta Fed makes this like GDP estimator. Philadelphia Fed has these really good forecasters. The St. Louis Fed has focused on data, presenting the data, and they care a little bit about economic education as well. And so you can see here at the top of the page, fred.stlouisfed.org. That's a great website if you just even want to play around with it and get any economic data for anything. It's a great site. And so as you can see here at 2:33 p.m. today, it's up there in the corner, I just did some very simple things to kind of motivate today's discussion. So this is what's called real GDP. So I'm going to go over all of these concepts here. I'm just trying to give you a sense of where we're going to go with this. So this is real GDP. That stands for the real part of that term. Real GDP means that we're going to control for price changes in prices. We're going to measure actual production. And if we look at this over the past 1 year, this shouldn't be too surprising, right? That well, now you can actually blame COVID, right? That the pandemic and the shutdown associated with it has caused a dramatic decline in production. And we can see that here, right? Now, take note, there was already kind of a softening occurring in Q1. And that's typically because Q1 is among our slowest quarters. So it's kind of coming off of a very strong Q4, right? Which is quarter, right? So you divide the year into 4 parts. Q4 would start October 1st and get you all the way to December, which is obviously during actually the two biggest spending holidays of the year. That would be Christmas, obviously, and Halloween. You'd be surprised. I mean, Halloween is actually going to cause quite a. Not having Halloween is actually going to be quite a strain on the economy. And in Q1, you don't have much going on in terms of holidays, right? You got like President's Day, St. Patrick's Day. I don't know what else you got in Q1. New Year's Day, technically speaking. Anyway, so there was a little bit of a downturn there, but what you're really seeing is obviously the dramatic downturn here, starting in the gray corner. What letter is that, Pierce? I? Okay, well, you're not always accurate. Okay, just making sure there was no one waiting. Okay, now, what if I bring this out a little bit further, right? If I look at this over the past 20 years, you get a better sense of what historic times you all live in, right? That it is the most dramatic decline in GDP that we've had since the Great Depression. That's absolutely true. During a typical recession, even the most severe one that we had prior to this was the 2008-2009 period, which is that gray region in the middle, and that even wasn't that significant. Now, the expectation of many is that at first this is going to look like a V. So it's going to go down and down and down. Then we're going to get a cure, and then it's going to go straight back up. I'm not sure if people really believe that that's, and I'm sure there's still some people who try to believe that, but we're not exactly sure if that's going to be the case. You may ask yourself, why was the gray region on the far left-hand side, that short recession we had after the tech bubble burst, why was that so short and so slight? I mean, when I talk about a 2001 recession, I mean, look at that. That's like nothing. And that's largely because Alan Greenspan, well, there's two reasons. One, I was actually at the Fed at that time, so maybe I had some influence on things. Not really. But really, Alan Greenspan pumped a lot of money into the economy, which we'll learn about more as we remember things about like monetary policy and whatnot. He pumped a lot of money into the economy at that point, which kept the economy pretty much stabilized and then fueled the increase that you see between those two gray regions, which is our housing bubble, which then eventually bursts. And if we look at this, even over a longer period of production, again, you can see the dramatic fall, just how significant it is in 2020. Now, what about prices? So this is the general, the way that economists generally measure prices is they use a basket of goods called the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. And it basically looks at all goods purchased by consumers, and it looks at how those goods change over time. And what you can see here is that up until the mid-1970s, inflation was a generally controlled phenomenon. And then something happened in the 70s that set the rate of inflation on a different pace. Yet, as you see here, it has been relatively steady. And there's very, very few instances, with one of the examples being in that gray region, where the prices actually fell. So when the prices actually fall, that's very, very bad. And we've got, fortunately, very few instances, one of them being here. But if you also can look very slightly on the far right-hand side, you see a slight little decrease during the current pandemic that we're in. Falling prices, as we're going to see here, is actually a pretty bad problem. Now, if we take this and just look over the past 10 years, that decline we can see was actually rather temporary, but still existed. And what we would do here, I should have mentioned this. So as of Q2 in 2020, we're about a $17 trillion economy. For the CPI, what we would have to do is calculate the percentage change in the index numbers to be able to estimate the percentage change in the prices. Now, what we could do further to complicate this is we could take out the food and energy prices, which are more volatile. And then we could look at the price changes. And theoretically, the price changes should be less. And we kind of see, again, the severity of the current recession that we're in has had very large deflationary forces going on in the economy. And so when I thought about that, and expectations, as we're going to see here, expectations are actually quite important. Because what expectations do for us is we make all of our decisions based on what we think the future is going to look like. And so if we, what we can see here is that there's a general expectation that prices are going to go up. Let's see here, not always. Don't hold that, I found a person. Wait. Can you hear me now? Yes?
Yes, there you go.
Oh, Pierce, why do you have to at that point fall? Come here, buddy. What happened? Come here. What I was trying to say was... Here, let me hold you. I'm gonna hold you. So, here's my question. My question is... Here. So why is it that on the far right-hand side here, this is showing inflation expectations. Why is it that on the far right-hand side that everyone thinks that inflation is going to occur? Ah, here comes my wife to take my crying son. I should say our crying son. She's doing part of the labor there. Here, Truman, take this. Truman, take this. Truman. Outside close. Why is this going up? Why are people expecting inflation here? Someone say something. Why is there this expectation of inflation right there?
It could be because of all the stimulus checks everyone's getting and certain prices, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And the more money that people have, the prices are going to have to rise with it.
Yep.
And
yep.
the value
and if they're making all that stuff, right, then there could be any number of reasons as well, right? Even the cost of production is going up because right now we can't have as many people in the factory, or, you know, maybe all of the scarce, you know, maybe we can't have as many truckers because truckers can't all go to, you know, the truck station, you know, to refuel at once. There's a whole number of reasons why this is now just a more expensive world to be in, but also people just have more money to be spending. Hey, Truman, take it outside and throw it out when you're done. So, if everyone is expecting more inflation, right, and we see that here, we don't have very many moments where it's been that dramatic of an increase, with the last moment previous to that being during the last stimulus, right, back in 2010 on the far left-hand side. When you had that stimulus, there was also the expectation of really high inflation. Yet, it didn't come about. And so the question will be, is that going to happen again? Are we going to see that same kind of change happening? You know, I guess we'll find out. And then the final one we've got is the unemployment rate. So we have GDP, which is our measure of production. We have CPI, our measure of inflation, along with the inflation expectations. And now we have our unemployment rate. So this is over since we started collecting statistic in 1947. We can see here that the pandemic caused technically speaking, it's closer to 20%, although officially it was measured at like 15%, but that's another story. You can see this here, that it has been downward trending, but that it did reach its peak in April to be the highest since, to be the highest that was ever measured. The only examples we have of it being anywhere nearly as high would have been during the 2008-2009 crisis, when it was 10.1%, I think was the peak, back in 2008-2009. And then previous to that, we had an instance in 1979 or 1980 where it was also like 10% or 10.1%. So it's still historically high. We never have had one higher measured because we didn't start collecting this data until 1947. If we look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, though, and we start to wonder why are people unemployed and what are the other ways we could think of them being unemployed, typically when you see the data, you're given U3, which is, again, called our official unemployment rate, which is our total unemployed as a percent of the civilian labor force. And we can see that right now it's at 10.2% after reaching its peak of 14.7. But in reality, it wasn't 14.7, it was something closer to 20. But U3 is actually a very narrow definition of unemployment. U6 is a little bit more appropriate to use, except we just don't hear about it very often. So what U6 covers rather than U3, is the fact that What if I lost my job and to pay the bills, I had to go get a job at, Starbucks? I don't know. From everything Cody described about the job, seems like I could probably do it. I can mispronounce people's name and miswrite their name on coffee cups. Granda is the big one, right? So I know that. Vente is the little one, I think. Right? So I'd figure it out. And, but you'd have a person who's actually trained as a professor, a person who does research and has a PhD teaching, serving coffee. No offense, right? But so that would mean then that I am probably underemployed, which is covered by our U6, which means that I am attached to the labor force, but only marginally speaking, meaning I'm just doing this job just until I can get another professor job. That statistic, even today, is at 16.5%. That would mean, like, I want full-time hours, but I'm only given part-time hours. And that's not even covering necessarily things like Uber or Lyft, which people are using for money, but they're not in the labor force, which is a whole other issue. So, with that said, let's go to this. So these are the slides now that I'll start talking about. As I start to talk about them, if you have any questions as I'm doing it, just interrupt. I'm not going to be looking at the chat function because my screen right now is just overly focused on these slides. So if you have any questions about something, this is totally your time to say something. I will try to be looking at the clock so that at maybe around 6:10 or 6:20, I stop for a little bit for a few minutes. We can all do what we gotta do. This is being recorded, so if you have to leave early or you miss a few minutes or your brain starts going mad, don't worry, things will be recorded. And I'll probably have it posted by tonight or tomorrow at the latest. Okay, so this is following, when I say chapter 2, this is following in the Manque book that you can still download in La Lima, but I will be taking down the link tomorrow. So if you have not downloaded the textbook link, I would strongly encourage you to do so. Okay, so this was a focus. Certainly if you took macro with me, this was my focus. Anyway, after we got done with demand and supply, we talked about these three things. And then when we talk about, what we could say here is, right, that the focus, sorry, it's just me using my finger, that the one side of it would be, how do we measure it, right, which I kind of talked about in these beginning slides here. That would be, if you took macro with me, that was kind of the middle part of the course, where we're just focused on how do you measure it, how is that statistic good, how might that statistic not be good. And then in the last part of the course, which we didn't have enough time to do, which we end up spending more time in this course doing, which would be, how do we fix it? How do we use monetary policy and fiscal policy to make these statistics what we want them to be? What we generally want these to be is that we want the prices to be increasing about 2% a year. Unemployment, we want to be about 5% a year. And we want the economy to grow between 2 to 3% a year. To the extent that we do not meet those standards, we would expect that the central bank would get involved, the Federal Reserve, or we would expect that the government should get involved. So obviously, with an unemployment rate that's far greater than 5%, we would expect that the Federal Reserve should be getting involved, which it is. And we would expect that the government should get involved, which it is. the way in which it's dealing with the current crisis is quite complicated. It's not exactly ideal. It's not exactly how I would do it, but at the same time, it's obviously pretty infused with the fact that this is an election year and all those kinds of things. And even with the Federal Reserve, there's just tension between members of the central bank and with the politicians as well. So as I just talked about here, our prices, we're generally going to use something like our CPI. And we could do it with something that excludes food and energy, which changes more wildly, or we could just measure everything. The employment rate, this is a survey. Probably the biggest misnomer about unemployment rates is that, that the government can basically, find out how many, looks at people's paychecks or counts how many paychecks are being sent out or something like that. It's quite literally a survey. They call people up and they ask them a series of questions to put them into the appropriate labor category of being unemployed, which is actually what is the reason why there were complications with that 14.4% unemployment rate that I talked about. What was happening was that employers I don't want to go too much into this, and it's not part of the material you need to know. It's just you learning more about the interesting world we live in. So think about what life was like back in March, right? For those of you who had me for class back in March, right, we just all went on spring break and then we never came back. It was a pretty crazy time. But think about what happened if you became unemployed in March, right? Well, hey, why don't we got enough people in this class. Someone probably had that experience. Someone tell me, preferably by saying it rather than chatting it, that way I'll really know you said it. Did anyone get unemployed in March? Someone say yes or no, someone, and then I'll focus on that person.
Yes.
Claudia, okay. Okay, Claudia. What kind of job were you doing?
I was working at a restaurant in Ward as a bakery cashier.
Okay, and what did they tell you? What did they tell you when they got rid of you in March? They just say, yeah,
what
they say?
bothers me is that, like, how our boss or like whoever from work would usually communicate to us is through text message. And I come into work on that Sunday and they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I doing here? I'm here to work. And they're like, you didn't get the message? And I was like, what message? They're like, and then obviously they explained to us or to me, and I was like,
it's
okay.
And they're like, way.
They were like, why didn't anyone message Claudia? And in my head, I'm like, dang.
Isn't that also like a bad way to do it? Like, isn't that like,
it
I don't know, like
is.
breaking
Well,
up with
like,
someone via text or something?
The restaurant is kind of like very like unconventional in the way they do certain things. But yeah, so technically,
do you know
what
the text said? So here's my question: did the text say like, "Okay, you're unemployed"?
Oh no. Okay.
Go find something.
So
or...
I didn't even get the message from them. Like whatever anyone else saw. Like I got told this to my face because I actually went into work, like not knowing. But then of course, like months later, because I was like keeping track of our. I was stopping by a restaurant's social media a few times, and I noticed, I was like, oh, they're open again. And I messaged my boss. I was like, hey, because there's waiters, there's bakery cashiers, and then there's hostesses. And I was like, are the bakery cashiers gonna be let back, or are you guys only like limiting like the amount of workers, like da da da?
Sure.
And my boss is like, oh, I'll let you know. It's been 2 months. She hasn't said anything, and I'm like, well.
So it's exactly.
Yeah.
So here's the question, Claudia. So this is the perfect example, especially in your really shitty situation. So if the survey person had called you, this is the way that it would kind of worked out. And I'm just kind of paraphrasing the questions here, but it would have been, okay, Claudia, what do you do? And you'd say, bakery cashier. And then I would say, how many hours did you work last week? And you'd say, none. I just was told that I didn't, that we're shutting down the restaurant. And then right in that first week, they'd be saying, right, like, but do you expect to go back to work in the next week or two, or month or two when the restaurant opens up again? And you at that point would have said, yeah, heck yeah, right? They're gonna right. No one really understood the depths of the disease, and plus they gave you this false hope. And that's exactly what most employers did, right? It's got to be tough to be a boss, but you would think they earn their big money by saying like really shitty things to people that are true but have to be said, right? Which would be, sorry, Claudia, there's no work for you, dude. But they were like, oh, let's still be friends, and things will work out. Like, yeah, we'll catch you on the flip side, and right. But that gave you false hope, so that when the interviewer called you, you said, yeah, I'm totally getting back to work. And that's what most people did. So the way that the survey is designed then is it's designed so that people who are just temporarily laid off, because in this case of a business condition, are not counted as unemployed. But that actually added up to almost 5%. So there were enough Claudias out there who said, no, I'm going to totally be coming back to work, when in fact they were not going to be coming back to work. So that's kind of what was going on there. And so you're still unemployed at this point? I guess that's the way it goes, right? Okay. So then we've got economic growth. And here, the way that we calculate economic growth is, one way we do it is by spending. And we've put it into 4 categories, as we will see here. Consumption, which is our C, investment, which is our I, government spending, which is our G, and net exports, which is what we sell to the rest of the world. We'll talk about that a bit more here, what's going on here, but these are the 3 things and how they are measured. Now, as you saw with the numbers I gave you of what our goals are, the general goals, the first primary, most important, overriding, top goal is price stability. That is the number 1 goal of any modern developed economy. Nothing else matters. Not the amount of employment, not the amount of economic growth, only one thing. And the reason why price stability is so important is because once that breaks down, once prices are no longer stable, the entire economy collapses. So let's do it both ways. Why would it collapse if it was volatile? And then why would it collapse if prices were really, really high? It would collapse if it was unstable. The economy would collapse if it was unstable, because no one then would be willing to save money or borrow money, right? Because no one would be able to know what the interest rate is, right? Everyone would be like, I don't know what the future looks like, so I'm just going to put my money, under, I don't know why people say under their mattress. My mattress is like dusty as hell under it. I wouldn't put anything important under my mattress. I get like a big baller safe, right? Like I'll get a big safe where I have to have a key. Oh, and I'll wear the key around my around my neck, like on a chain. Oh, it'd be really cool. That's where I'm gonna put my money. In my cool money safe with my fancy key. But also, if you needed to borrow money, right, you're probably not going to get money from the bank because they don't want to give you money because they don't know what the future looks like when you're paying back interest rates. And so because no one is borrowing money and no one is saving money, then there's no capital growth, meaning no one's going to build stuff. And if there's no capital growth, meaning no investments in buildings and machines and inventory, then the economy doesn't grow. The economy collapses. If prices are very, very high, you also tend to destroy the economy because people engage in transactions just out of the fact that they know prices are going to go up again in the future. So people do really weird things when prices are really high. And generally speaking, really high inflation for a very long period of time generally will destroy an economy as well. Not as quickly as price instability. Price instability, you can't sustain too much of that. Even in the United States, you can't sustain very much of that before the economy is destroyed. Low unemployment, I mean, that's kind of a political thing. It's not, I don't think economists get too hot and bothered by what the unemployment rate or employment rate is. High and sustained economic growth, same thing. It's a political thing. Yeah, we want to see growth, but it's okay to just not be growing. We don't always need more, but we do need the stable prices. And so as we look at that, this is a little bit more than about the prices that we already have looked at with the graph of what it looks like. So this is all measured by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is part of the Department of Labor. And it basically looks at what a household spends, its basket of goods that it spends money on. How is that basket of goods changing in price over time? Now, the reason why it's important, well, there's a lot of reasons why it's important, but one reason why it's important is because many contracts exist out there that are linked to what the annual inflation rate is. So for instance, I have a labor contract along with all of the professors with the state that states that my wage will increase by 1.2% as of July 1st. It should have increased by 1.2%, and that even when I retire, that my pension payment will go up annually by the amount of how prices are changing. Now, before you think that means that I'm just getting like this big windfall, all that it's designed to do is keep me on pace with the fact that prices keep going up. I mean, seen in another light, right? And this all then kind of depends on your own political views, and that's far beyond the parameters of this course. If your wage isn't going up every year based on the fact that prices are going up, in real terms, your wages are going down because you're not going to be able to buy as much. Well, that's something you should take up with your boss then. Why isn't my wage going up with, with the change in prices every year? In my case, I'm able to at least keep, my wages are going up by 1.2%, but in some sense, I'm no better off or worse off than I was before prices changed. It's just the image of it makes it sound like I'm 1% richer. But in fact, I'm not, because I don't even own a Switch. So what does that consist of? What do people typically pay with their money for? Housing would be the biggest part, transportation, and then food and beverages take up the remainder. Now, there's this really cool project that some engage in, because one of the things that for any of you whose parents are collecting Social Security or your grandparents are collecting Social Security, their Social Security payment goes up by the CPI. So I think a person will see like an $8 increase in their like benefit payment, or something really, really small. But think about, what do old people buy a lot of? Someone in class, tell me, what do old people buy a lot of? Someone say something. Or maybe I have to go back to the screen. What do old people buy a lot of? Someone tell me.
Medicine?
Yeah, exactly, right? Medicine, healthcare. Do old people spend a lot of money on housing? I mean, they could, but most of the time, they worked their whole life and they paid their mortgage and their house is paid off, right? Or they live in a nursing home, which technically is housing, but it's also really medical care, right? I live with my in-laws. I mean, they live with us. That's another not to spend money on. I don't know. She watches a lot of Wheel of Fortune and Price is Right. I'm sure if we had gambling here, maybe she would do bingo or something like that. I mean, so the idea of what I'm trying to give you here is that old people spend their money differently than us youngins. And if that's the case, then maybe their price index should look different. Which is actually a very cool idea. And it's actually one that they started to pursue. They haven't taken it any further, and I wish they would have. They actually came up with something called the CPIE, which is supposed to be basically, right, it'd have a lot of medicine in it. It would have a lot of, lottery tickets in it, and things that old people spend their money on. Unfortunately, it hasn't gone anywhere. As you can see here, Social Security is still trying to ask the government to say, let's use this CPI for elderly, but it's not going anywhere. So old people are actually kind of hurt by this because, old people don't drive as much as they used to than when they were younger, right? Old people drive slow, if anything, right? So they don't use as much gas, or, they buy big Buicks or Toyota Avalons. They're not like buying Roadsters or Roadster Racers. They're buying cheaper, more sensible cars. Now, to remind you a little bit about how this is calculated, and let me add in here. Actually, let me go here. Here. Where do I want it? Sorry, I'm just looking at how to make for myself I see virtual background now. Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to a whiteboard here. Be patient with me. Whiteboard, can everyone see a whiteboard? Yes?
Yep.
Good, okay. So, let me see. Let's see if this works. Even though it's the school's iPad, I don't want to necessarily wreck it. Let me see. Sorry, 1 second. Let's see if I have a stylus in my school bag. I don't know, doesn't that make you kind of all feel It's an interesting world we live in that even professors still carry school bags. It'd make you think that, like, I don't know, maybe I should just be mature and move away from having a school bag. But no, it just seems convenient, even though I'm no longer a student. Let's see. Okay, well, I'll just use my finger on this. Okay. So here'd be the idea. Let's say that we have goods 1, 2, and 3. And that the price of these goods in year 1 is $3, $5, and $10. And that the price of the goods in year 2 is $3, $7, and $12. And that the price of the goods in year 3 is $4, $8, and $15. But, and the way that I'm organizing this is very specific. Because of the way that the price index, something like the CPI, is constructed. Hey Truman, can you do me a favor? Can you let me borrow your stylus from school? What? I need it from my school. Okay. Can you go get it for me? I don't know where. Please? Can you find it for me? Please? Oh, totally denied. Any of you who have kids, everything's a battle. Okay, so the way that this kind of thing is constructed, the way the CPI is constructed, the quantity always stays the same. In every year, whatever a good one is, I don't know, you can make it whatever you want. Lottery tickets, comic books, if you don't buys comic books anymore. Whatever you're buying, they always buy 15 of good 1. They always buy, let's say, 20 of good 2, and they always buy 100 of good 3. Well, let's make it 210 of good 2 since it looks like 210, right? So they buy always 15 of good 1, 210 of good 2, and 100 of good 3. Which means then, how much are they spending in year 1? So budget subscript 1. That would be equal to 3 times 15 plus 5 times 210 plus 100 times 10. Sorry, plus 100 times 10. Someone want to do the math for me? I'm just not feeling it right now. Someone should say it. Otherwise, we'll sit here and wait.
That's 3 times 210, right?
5 times 210. Price of good 2 in year 1 is 5 times 210. Sorry, and I should rewrite this here so that's more clear. It'd be 10 times 100, not 100 times 10. Oh. This makes it a little clearer. It doesn't change what, right, that it would be 1,000, but it just gives you a nice symmetry. So what's that? 45, 1,045, 2,095? Is it 2,095?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now, repeat that process for, let's just do it for year 2. because obviously you could do this for all 3 years. Oh, my card may not have been present for purchase. It's so bad. So now in year 2 would be this 3 times that 15. That 7 times that 210. That 12 times that 100. What does that equal?
I got 2715.
Okay, I'll go with it. I don't know how to give myself more space here. I'm not sure I'll save it to photos. Sure. Ooh, sure, why not? Save it to my photos. Can I go back to my whiteboard? Well, it doesn't matter. Okay, budget in year 2 was what, 2715? What was it?
Yes, 2715.
Okay, and what was it in year 1? What was that number again? I don't have that screen anymore.
It was 29 something.
Better not be. Better be less than 2715. Was it? What was it?
2095.
2095? Okay. Say right now, if you are a person who does not follow where we're at right now, say right now, I don't know what you're talking about, Shida. Oh, here we go. Here's how to get it back to it. So I made up these numbers. All these numbers here were made up. I made up all of those numbers. But the idea was that I had 3 different products with 3 different prices over the course of those 3 years, but the quantity was always the same. And in year 1, because I always like the same basket of goods, a basket of goods that has 15 units of good 1, 210 units of good 2, 100 units of good 3, because that's my favorite basket of goods. And I always buy that basket of goods. In year 1, given the year 1 prices, that basket of goods cost me $2,095. And that now, in year 2, that same exact basket of goods now costs me $2,715. Does that make sense to everybody so far? If it doesn't, you should say something. This is totally your time to say something. And again, I'm hoping part of this is review, part of this you might be bored out of your gourd listening to this, but it puts us all on the same page. So now what we do is we calculate the CPI. I'm sorry?
My bad.
Was that okay? No worries, dude. No worries. So CPI, the equation for this if we go back to the slide, which I can do, but the CPI, we have a different index number each year. So let's just call this CPI subscript X. So that would be the CPI in a given year, that given year being X, would be how much do I spend in that given year? So TE, we're calling it budget, but if you read in a book or if you go on the Google machine and you look at things, You might sometimes see it described as total expenditures, TE. And if I make year one the base year, then the CPI in year one would be, how much do I spend in year one, right? That was at 2,095. And then how much are the expenditures in the base year? Well, if year one is also the base year, then I would have the same number in the numerator and denominator. And then times 100, and it equals 100. That is always what the index number is in the base year. In the base year, the CPI is always 100. Now, what about in year two? That was my 27, sorry, and I should have added here, times 100. Budget in year two is 2715. So that's going to go in my numerator. The expenditures in my base year, which is the expenditures in year one, is in my denominator. Does someone want to calculate what that is? 2715 divided by 2095 times 100. Use your overpriced cell phones to calculate this, which is basically the feature that anyone buys a phone for. I don't know why people, right? We all take pictures with it and we basically use the calculator. That's what we do. Someone use your phone. What is that number?
I got.
What is it?
129.59.
Okay. Okay. Now, in this case, for the next step, economists use the triangle, the delta, as our way of talking about changes. Basically, the percentage change in those index numbers is the way that we would be able to talk about the change in prices. I don't care how you calculate this. I'm not trying to make you percentage change calculating kind of people. Perhaps the easiest way to do it, quite honestly, would be that you go onto Google and you can type in something as simple as, what's the percentage change between 129.59 and 100? Or you can calculate it using that equation, new minus old over old times 100. In this case, it'd be 129.59 minus 100 over 100 times 100 equals basically a 29.59% change. So that's how you would calculate that between years one and year two, that prices changed by 29.59%. Going through those steps. Now, go all the way back to the very first page. It's largely being driven by the fact that prices increased 40% for good two, and that prices increased 20% for good three. So that makes sense, right? Based on how many we're buying of each good, you have a good that we're buying kind of an intermediate amount of, increasing by 40%, and then a good that we buy slightly more of, increasing by 20%. We should probably be seeing something then between 20 and 40%, which is in fact what we are finding. Good one did not change price at all. That's kind of like the Costco hot dogs of our products here, which does not change price at all. Okay. let me get out of this. Someone quickly tell me, can you see my slides again? Yes, no? Maybe, maybe not.
See a white screen.
Oh, that's it? No. Okay, let's try to fix this. Sorry, I'm just learning how to. Should have taken a class on how to use Zoom, but I was feeling cocky at the time and thought I could do it all without having to. There we go. Okay, now you should see slides, hopefully. Yes. Yep. Perfect. That's it. Okay. So you'll see these equations here. You don't need me to, yeah, I'm just kind of walking you through it. I'm assuming then you can all look at slides and kind of see what's going on here. But basically, we found a positive increase of 29.59. Because it was positive, that's what we call inflation. If that number had instead been negative, then it would have been deflation. Not a preferred situation. And here's kind of another simple example, but it looks pretty nice. I stole this from a textbook. I don't know what kind of person this is. If their basket of goods has 10 pens, 5 shirts, and 3 pairs of shoes, like what's going on in that person's life? They're an odd duck. But this is just another way of walking you through how you do the equation. So first, calculate the budget. Then you calculate the CPI. Then you calculate the percentage change in the CPI. So it's a 3-step process. Now, in principles, sometimes one of the things I would have done would have been I would make your life easier by taking out some of those steps so that you could do your exam in time. Is that if I give you CPI numbers, you should then be able to take, let's see here, between 1966 and 1969, so that'd be 36.7 minus 32.4 over 32.4 times 100. So that the answer for this part right here would be whatever that turns out to be, right? Which would be about 1% or so. Wait, what? Oh, sorry, 10%, sorry, over 10%, sorry. I think I threw my head here. Here'd be the way that you could set it up. Obviously, I set it up correctly. I just misplaced the decimal point while I was doing it in my head. And I'm just going to skip over that slide there. Now, when you took this class in principles, then the discussion ended by talking about what does it get wrong, right? What is it, how is that CPI statistic that we calculate, how could it be wrong? Well, the things it doesn't measure are things like the substitution bias, introduction of new goods, and how things change over time in quality. So substitution bias, it's unreasonable to think that if that, right, with that one good that we looked at that was going from 5 to 7, if something is increasing in price by 40%, it's unlikely I would still buy 210 units of that product in both years, even though the price went up by 40%. So I'd certainly probably substitute away from it towards some other good, some other substitute. But this doesn't allow that to happen, right? What do old people do when their medicine goes up too high in price? They stop taking their medicine, right? Or they cut it in half or do whatever they do. When they do that, it then means that they're not going to keep spending. Their drug prices are going up. They're not going to keep buying the same amount of the drugs, right? If they can get away with it, right? If it's just, oh, you watch enough TV, it looks like everyone's got dry skin or itchy skin, right? Dude, I mean, if times are that tough in the sharing household, I'm going to have to live with dry skin, right? I'm not going to get my, I don't know, whatever prescription drug anymore, and I'm just going to live with itchy skin, or only somewhat itchy skin, right? Because I'll only use half of the amount. Introduction of new goods. So it's only a few years ago that streaming services were added to this. You know, Lyft rides, you know, things like that. So there's always a delay in new goods being measured as part of this. And then the final one, which is also pretty big in some areas, would be changes in quality. So we could still be saying something like a person buys one car, let's just say every year, just to make our life simple. Someone buys a new car every year. Well, the kind of car a person buys this year is so much better than a car they would have bought 20 years ago, right? Or 30 years ago. My father tells the story of the first car he ever bought in 1974, Chevy Nova, which had a, you had to pay for the option of an AM radio. You had to, what else were the features that it have? Not really any other features besides the AM radio, which you had to pay for. Right, but the car didn't always start. It didn't obviously have any airbags. It didn't last for that long before it finally broke. And it just wasn't a good car. Cars today, right, have modern safety features. They often come with a stereo, right, they're more reliable. So cars cost more, but I would argue you're also getting more for it. Most of that bias that I just talked about, most of that has been removed to some extent. Okay, so with that, we're now finished with inflation, which now means we're going to get to unemployment. It's now 6:25 now. Let's take a break until 6. We'll do 6:35. Let's give this all 10 minutes to rest and relax here. So it's 6:35. I'm going to resume. So for right now, I'm going to pause the meeting. Just stay in the meeting and just know that at 6:35, I'm going to come back into the meeting and pick it up from slide 15. I'll also have my headphones off. So if you want to get my attention in some way, either do it right now or do the chat, or when the meeting ends, I'll also be sticking on the meeting longer. Okay. So for right now, I'm going to pause our recording, pause our meeting. And I have to figure out how to pause it. Sorry, I have to figure out how to pause our meeting. Okay, but if you want to leave now or pause your meeting as well, if you leave the meeting, don't worry too much. I'll remember to add you back to it. Go back. Okay. So I'm going to start talking here about going back to Can anyone confirm for me that you can see the slides again? Yes, someone confirm?
Yep.
Yep, perfect, okay. So now we're talking about employment and unemployment. So remember when we were talking in the beginning of class, right? Claudia loses her job, and now we ask her all these series of questions. The whole point of me asking her this series of questions is to put her into one of these categories, right? So she says, you know, what's your name? Claudia. What do you do? And she says, I'm in the Army, right? Well, now we know, already put her right there, right? Or if she says, I'm a teenager, well, then we can put her right there, right? Or if she says, I go by inmate number 54265, then we know she's right there, right? If she doesn't say those three things, one of those three things, and we know she exists, then if she's not that, then she is in the civilian non-institutional population. So now my next series of questions would be, okay, is she not in the labor force or in the civilian labor force? So, you know, and you can look up this survey. Sorry. Sorry, I'm actually just wanting to see the actual survey. Oh, sorry, it's not the establishment survey, sorry. There's a letter from Jerry Powell if you fill out the survey. I'm not seeing. Well, it should be here. Oh, sorry. This is the establishment survey. That's why I can't find it. This middle bullet right there, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, we'll call it the Claudia clause. That would be the middle thing right there. The Claudia clause. I like that. Anyway, I can't really do a census, does it? So I am going with somewhere with this here. No, I think I'm just wasting time here. Although you may think I am. Although I'm about to give up. I'm about to give up. Okay, but anyway, you could look on Google. I'm sure we could find the survey on there if I was more patient. But basically, you know, Claudia says on none of these three things. I don't know why I'm picking any Claudia. I just haven't. she would say, I'm not in any of these three categories, but I am a person who exists, so I am part of the population. So she's not in the green box, and she's in the blue box. Then she's going to be asked, okay, in essence, she's going to be asked, well, what do you do with all your day, right? If she just says, I sit on the couch all day and, my parents are really rich, so they just give me a big fat check every month for doing nothing, and I don't do anything, I don't want to do anything, then she's going to be not in the labor force, right? Or if they call up one of our parents or grandparents and they say, dude, I'm retired, they would also be not in the labor force. Or if they called you up right now, right? It'd be a little tricky of how to define what Claudia specifically is right now, because if she's now a full-time college student, she's going to be considered not in the labor force. Even though she was working, it was kind of like on the side, and it was ancillary, or it was secondary to her being a college student, which is obviously different than someone who works a full-time job and takes just like one class at a time just to, finish a degree eventually. That's a very different kind of person. It's going to be measured a little bit different. But now what if she says, yeah, I worked at the Cheesecake Factory, right? Then she's going to be part of the civilian labor force, and she's going to be counted as employed. What if she says, I'm not working right now, but I'm looking for work. I'm sending out resumes. I'm calling up employers. I'm trying to figure it out. Then she's going to be counted as unemployed because she's actually taking steps to actively look for work. But what if she says, I'm not working right now. I did look for about 6 months, but I just have gotten to the point of just saying, fuck it. Like, I know I'm not going to find anything. So now, I got to get a pretty sweet setup. I live, with my boyfriend, and he pays all the bills, and, it's all good. Then she's going to be not in the labor force. But do you see how there can be quite a bit of movement between those two categories? And it's all going to depend on the fact that in both of those two scenarios, she isn't working. But then it really depends on whether she's looking or not. One suggestion of why you actually might then think that the current unemployment rate is actually worse than what it actually is right now is due to the fact that people can't go looking for work right now, right? They can't go out and be sending out resumes or be doing things, doing an interview, and firms aren't probably even going to want to hire people right now. So people are just probably saying, just live on my unemployment checks, and I'm not going to really look right now. We know that unemployment agencies are even relaxing their search requirements, so people probably aren't even looking right now. And so then what you do is you start putting people into categories. So this is just one, I just took a random date in the past, is that we can put all the numbers into these categories. If we go back to here, and I go to here, and I go to here, that's exactly how they organize it here. Right, so basically you can take these numbers and you can see here that unemployed, not in labor force, employed, civilian labor force, civilian non-institutional population. All these things are being measured, and then we can calculate, based on that, we can calculate the unemployment rate. Okay, I'm going to skip over some of these just because I know you can read, and you'll have a general sense of who are in these different categories. Again, the Claudia clause would be the second bullet point here. They were not working, were waiting to be called back to a work which had been temporarily laid off. Everyone just thought, yeah, I'm going to get my job back as a bakery cashier person, and dude, she's totally not. So she's not temporarily laid off, she's laid off. Why you are unemployed then becomes pretty important for understanding how we can get that person to be employed again. And to figure that out, we'd have to know whether the person is a loser, a leaver, a re-entrant, or a new entrant. Based on your work history and where you are in life, it's all going to depend on, are you going to get your birthday drink? Okay. The power of boba tea. The loser, the person who is a loser is a person who was fired or laid off. That would be Claudia in this case, right? She lost the job that she used to have. The leaver would have been if she had said the day before the pandemic occurred, if she had said, I don't need you, I quit, then she would have been a leaver. A re-entrant would be, what if, Claudia had, had a baby or something and then said, I'm going to spend the first 2 years spending it with my new child. And so she was out of the labor force for, let's say, 3 total years. She gets back into the labor force. It's going to take her a while to find that job right away because she hasn't been looking for 3 years, right? And she doesn't even know what LinkedIn is. Has to update her wardrobe and that kind of thing. New entrant, that'd be like if you graduated from college, like there's some basic skills you're gonna have to learn about the real world and getting a new job. But the skills that you give any of these 4 categories would be very different depending on which category you're in, right? Like the loser, well, maybe they lost their job because they like to use swear words. Maybe they lost their job because they don't own a watch and they were always late. Maybe they lost their job because they don't have a car, right? And they can't get to work on time. That's a very different reason than the leaver. Why does someone quit their job, right? Is it just because they don't have any work initiative? Is it because they didn't have good childcare at home and they just had to quit their job, right? So as a public policy perspective, right, the loser, giving them free childcare for their children isn't probably going to stop them from losing their job, right? If the reason why they lost their job is because they swear all the time, right? That's going to help the leaver, right? If people are losing their job because they swear all the time, maybe they need to buy them a thesaurus, right? So if they use other words that sound like swear words but aren't really swear words. Re-entrance, that would be like encouraging people to update their resume or maybe trying to get them an internship. Same with new entrants, getting them an internship. Which leads us to being able to calculate 3 statistics here. The big one, though, that we would have focused on in 131 would have been the unemployment rate. Which sorry, I'm just trying to add a page here. Ooh, a sketch. But the unemployment rate is going to be the number of unemployed over the number that is my civilian labor force. And then I'm going to multiply that all by 100. So that something like if we go back to, oh, that's really inconvenient. I'm gonna get rid of that. That's me learning the coolness of our technology here. Let's see, go back up to this here. So if I wanted to count how many people are unemployed in this scenario, I would have 7.5 million over 149.1. What does that end up being? Anyone know? Someone tell me what that is.
That's 7.5 divided by 1491.
49.1. Yep.
49.1.
Yep.
I got 0.15. Oh, sorry, 15%.
Can't be. It's got to be 4-ish%, 5%, maybe 3%.
I got 5 point whatever.
Okay. 7.5 divided by 149.1, that whole then ratio multiplied by 100 should give you 5 something %, which is exactly the scenario we were in 2005. Okay, so going back to this, other statistics that you'd want to be able to at least know and be able to calculate would be the employment rate, which would be my number of employed over my civilian non-institutionalized population. Take note of the fact that the denominators here are different than these two. I'm going to say that right there. And then the final thing we can calculate is the labor force participation rate. How much of the labor force is actually deciding to work? It turns out, although I'm not too surprised, that men are becoming lazier. Their labor force participation rate is indeed falling. Women are certainly taking it up more than men. We know that the unemployment rate among different groups is different. White adults, white males, really, have a unemployment rate that's generally less than, for instance, Black teenagers or Hispanic teenagers. If you want to look at this specifically, but I can look at, I mean, do we really care, honestly, do we really care that 24% of 16 to 17-year-old males are out of work? Not really. I mean, they were just working at Zippy's anyway, so who cares? Who cares? Now, a bit more concerning, women who maintain families, meaning single mothers, have a unemployment rate that's double men who kind of push the burden onto their spouse, right? But even look at that, married women, spouse present. Look at that, it's still a third higher. Unfair. If you're a male in this class, stop taking advantage of others. If you're a woman in this class, put your foot down and demand what is rightfully yours. That's the only way I can interpret it. It's a little bit sociological what I'm saying to you, obviously, but to the extent that gendered roles are still traditionally followed, it's obviously hurting both married women and single mothers and even just women in general. Do I care that part-time workers have higher unemployment than full-time workers? Maybe, but I mean, really the focus does need to be on full-time workers. Okay, going back to the slides here. I'm just skipping over some of these slides. I'm assuming you can read. I just want to make sure we get through most of this before my time runs out here. Sorry, I'm just going to add Courtney into her on the phone. Got it. Okay. The discouraged worker, that's that situation where I would say right now, for instance, there's a lot of discouraged workers out there. So that would mean that someone is getting that phone call and they're going to say, no, I'm totally working. I'm totally not working, but I'm not even looking because things just seem so bad out there. They're not unemployed. They're going to be considered not in the labor force. But they are a discouraged worker because the moment we get the vaccine, then that person's going to start looking for work again. And then they immediately go from being not in the labor force to being in the labor force but unemployed. Now, there's some kind of unemployment that just always exists. That would be the natural rate of unemployment. Here in the US, natural unemployment rate is about 5%. There are always going to be some people that are unemployed just because they quit one job and they say, I don't want to work during trick or treat. I want to go trick or treating without the burdens of having to go to work. So it can be like they quit their job on the 20th of October and then they're going to start looking for work actively, right? Let's say they get a job right away. They're an accountant, the accountants get jobs right away. They quit their job on the 20th. They tell the new employer, dude, I'm starting on the 5th of November. I don't want to work during Halloween. But on October 30th, they get a call from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And they ask them, are you working? They would say no. Are you looking for work? Nope, because I found a job. Oh, you found a job? When do you start it? And they would say November 5th. So they're going to be counted as unemployed, but it's not going to be a different kind of unemployed. Frictional. Just the fact that they could choose when they want to pick on their new job, and that's what they've got there. Frictional unemployment is not a concern at all. Then we've got structural unemployment. That's bad. It's persistently bad, and it takes a long time to resolve itself. And that's primarily because, I've got training on how to drive a horse and buggy, right? And no one rides a horse and buggy anymore to anywhere. So I'm gonna have to train a person now how to drive a car. It probably took a long time, and if we'd been measuring these kinds of statistics in the early 1900s, there would have been a lot of structural unemployment there. Although I always laugh at the only other example I can give is actually the unemployment program here in the United States. They keep talking about mainframe computers, which, dude, most of you have probably never even seen a mainframe. I saw a mainframe computer once when I was in college because there was a mainframe computer there, and it did take up like half of the basement of the science building. But dude, no one has mainframe computers anymore. People just have regular computers, and regular computers are more powerful enough to do things. But mainframe computers had programmers, and apparently our unemployment system here, much like in other states, no one ever gives much attention to the unemployment system. So it turns out unemployment systems across the country are really outdated, and a lot of them use these outdated mainframe computers. So when we offered like employees like an extra $600 or $300, it becomes very difficult for states to do that because they now have to find someone that knows how to program a mainframe computer. But most of the time, those mainframe computer programmers are out of work and they are structurally unemployed. Now, the actual unemployment rate that we measure, so let's say again that it's 14%, would be the 5% that we might have for natural plus the cyclical. So if the actual number I've got here going on is 14%, that's what I measured it to be. That 14% is going to be the summation of the natural rate of unemployment, which is 5%, plus some rate that's higher than 5 caused by the fact that I'm in such a deep recession. That's going to be 9%. But again, none of this is going to take into account the fact that some people are going to be employed, but they're not going to be happy in the job that they have. So we are going to consider them unemployed. They're doing a work that they're either overly skilled for, or they're going to be working at a job where they don't get enough hours, or their skills are not all taken advantage of, used. Now, interestingly enough, we actually don't want everyone working. We actually want there to be some unemployment. The reason why we want there to be some unemployment is because to the extent that there's full employment, we get inflation. So right now, your ability as a, Claudia, I don't know what, Claudia, what were you making per hour at as a bakery cashier?
$12 hourly.
Yeah, dude, you're not going to see that now. It's going to be a little bit closer to, well, what's the minimum wage now? Is it still 10.10 or what is it now? What is the minimum wage?
It could go up.
Well, you better hope it does, Claudia, because you're going to be getting the minimum wage or not something only a little bit above that.
Like, I know that my I'm just going to say my former wage is on par with California's minimum wage, according to my brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
to
the extent that there's a long line of workers now ready to take on the jobs that Claudia did while she's in school, right? There's now like bunches of teenagers all willing to take her job, right? There's like new entrants to the labor force totally willing to take her job, right? There's all these people in the hospitality industry. You're like, dude, bakery cashier, I can totally do that too, instead of making a bed. To the extent that all these people now want to be bakery cashiers, you know, Claudia's going to go like strutting into the bakery cashier restaurant and say like, dude, I used to make 12 something an hour. And I'm like, dude, I got 10 people that want this job. If you're not going to take 10 an hour, go beat it, right? And she's going to have to take it, right? And she had the power to demand a higher wage when like the Four Seasons had everyone hired, you know, Alani had everyone hired. You'd be like, if you don't hire me for 12, I'm walking, and then who are you going to get, right? So the ability of her to negotiate a higher wage goes up to the extent that there's little to no unemployment, which is what we've all in Hawaii had the ability to do up until the recent past year. Okay, I'm going to skip over some things here just to keep us somewhat on track here. One of the things you did see here, besides when you were seeing that I was looking at the surveys, instead of trying to find out all these unemployment statistics by calling up people and asking them questions, they also have the establishment survey. And that was a thing I had found rather easily. So there's also a survey where they ask businesses to say, how many people are you hiring? Did you get rid of anyone this month? Why did you get rid of them? Right? So they say, we got rid of Claudia because there was no work going on here. Right? And it should be relatively the same as if I called up Claudia and she told me truthfully, yeah, I got laid off from my job. And that's exactly what you see here, that the establishment survey should give you statistics that are roughly similar to the establishment survey. And that leads us to our third and last statistic, which would be how do we measure production? So production is going to be measured with something known as the GDP, gross domestic product. That would be the market value of all the final goods and services produced within the country's borders. We are not looking at intermediate goods. Intermediate goods would be like things we use to be able to produce something else. So if I buy a new car, typically a new car comes with a full tank of gas, it comes with tires, it comes with the air freshener. So I'm not going to count the air freshener, the tires, and that full tank of gas as part of the GDP because it's actually used in the car that I purchased. Whereas if I drove my car tonight to go get gas at Costco, that's going to be part of GDP. So you have to be a little bit, government statisticians are going to have to be a bit precise about whether to count something or not as part of the GDP, depending on whether it's an intermediate good or not. And there are two ways to calculate this GDP. One would be the expenditure approach, and the other would be the income approach. Now, if you had me for 131, my focus overwhelmingly was on the expenditure approach. And what we did here is we focused on these 4 sectors. C plus I plus G plus NX. Wow, that's really badly written. C, I, G, and X. Let's look at what's in each of these categories now. So in consumption, there are basically 3 types of consumption goods. Durable goods, that would be like something that lasts a long time. Non-durable goods, something that doesn't last as long. And then services. Services are by far the most important, but consumption as a whole represents 70% of our nearly $18 trillion economy. So the American consumer is overwhelmingly the driver of the economy. Then you've got investment. This is probably the one that's confused the most of what it is, what it means to say that we've got investment going on. This would be spending on capital, and there's really 3 sources of capital. So investment is not like investing in a stock or a bond. Investment here would be a business buying new equipment or buying a building, individuals buying a new house, or a business producing stuff that they don't expect to sell now, but they expect to sell in the future. Inventories, residential fixed investment, business fixed investment. It turns out that this right here is the most volatile part of the economy, inventory investment. Think about if you were a business owner right now, what are you doing? You're probably just trying to survive. You're not like worried about, you know, building extra stuff to be able to satisfy holiday demand. You don't even know if the customers are going to be there for Christmas to buy stuff, right? They might just say, let's make our gifts at home this year. So if they say that, right, businesses are going to react by saying, why would I build up all this inventory? I'm just going to build it as the orders come in. Or if, let's say you had a crystal ball and you knew before the pandemic was going to occur that it was going to occur. Then you would have said, dude, let's halt production in January and just sell off all of our production that we had from previous quarters. Let's just sell it off so that we can just completely shut down and pause while the pandemic is occurring. Then we have government spending. This is government spending only on goods and services, not on like, when the government gives me a social security check or a welfare check meaning like food stamps or, Medicaid or something. Sorry, not Medicaid. If it gives me a subsidy for my insurance, for buying private health insurance, that is not part of government spending. Government spending would be, so for instance, when IGE and the Hawaii state government pays my wage, they are paying for me to be an employee of a state and deliver a service to the state, right? Teaching a class. So that would be government spending. Or if the government fixes a water pipe or builds a new bridge or, spends money on Medicare, Medicaid, directly buying good medical goods and services, that would be government spending. So now if we look at that, government spending is about 20%, and just to review for us here, fixed investments about 16, 17%. That gets us then to net exports. That would be exports minus imports. We import more than we export. Imports are things that we buy from the rest of the world. Exports are things that we sell to the rest of the world. So we buy more from the rest of the world than we sell to the rest of the world. So that's going to be a negative number. This is from 2004. It's dated, obviously. It's just, they had a nice looking picture. Take it from somewhere else if you want to. But basically, we would add up our C plus our I plus our G plus our NX. So 70 plus 16 plus 19 plus negative 5 should get you something pretty close to 100. There's another thing called GNP. Don't worry about it. We don't spend any time on it, so just, don't worry about it. Now, GDP also doesn't cover everything very well. The biggest thing that it doesn't cover is home labor. So with the virus being the way it is, I'm obviously spending a lot more time at home. And so because I'm spending more time at home, and my youngest child, my 2-year-old, can't really go to preschool right now, that means big savings for me. I don't have to spend all these tuition dollars on preschool, but a loss for the economy because now I'm doing it at home on my own. I don't even know if people bootleg anymore. But let's say I was engaged in selling crack cocaine. I might make a good business doing it. I might bring in good money doing it. But because it's illegal, it's not going to be part of GDP. Same with marijuana. Even though it's legal in many states, it's not legal nationally, so it's not going to be part of GDP. Used goods on eBay, or used goods really from anywhere, are not going to be part of GDP. The only thing that would be part of GDP are the extra services. So if I buy a used car, the used car itself is not going to be part of GDP. But if the car lot throws in extra services or washes the car or does some extra things, that part would be. As I already said, it's not going to be transfer payments, those things like Social Security, where there's no actual exchange of a good or service. That's not going to be part of GDP. And leisure. If you're sleeping, you're not doing anything for the economy. But I'd say one of the more important ones is, think of what COVID has done for our economy. There's many ways in which it's actually helped our economy. People dying is actually a really good business, right? You gotta have you gotta buy them, a crypt at the mortuary, or you gotta dig a hole in the ground and throw them in the hole. You got to, have a big party where they're gonna all, everyone's gonna come by and everyone's gonna come eat. Ooh, maybe you have like a seance and you try to get that person to like move the Ouija board so you can find out what they wanted to do in real life. Death is a good thing in this case for the GDP. So GDP should be going up to that extent, yet it's not. Or let's say that I get in a big bad car accident. Well, then I got to take my car to the car shop to get it fixed. Or maybe I break my leg. Now I got to go to the hospital and get some medical services done. Think about that. GDP is going to go up because all those things are going on. But obviously we don't want people to die. We don't want people to get in a car accident. Also, as I produce more stuff, we also obviously hurt the environment. So that's going to obviously, you're not going to want to see that occurring in the economy. But if you were paying attention, when I was showing you those graphs in the very, very beginning of this course, I was focused on real GDP. What real GDP does is it now keeps the price levels the same, but allows the quantity to change. So it's kind of like CPI. And what that's going to mean is that I can calculate nominal GDP by just adding up everything that's being produced. But it's going to be more important. GDP, let's see. So, but this point's an important point here. So I'm just trying to turn off my broadcast and go back to my whiteboard here. Nominal GDP would be to say, let's say that again, I have goods 1, 2, and 3. Call this product. So I have these products, goods 1, 2, and 3. Quantity in year 1, price in year 1. Quantity in good 2, price in year 2. Again, I can make up some numbers here. If I wanted to find out how much the nominal GDP was in year 1 and in year 2, that would be can someone read me the numbers? It's on the previous screen. It'll just make my life easier. 5 times 15. What else is it? Someone, or maybe maybe others didn't write it down. It's not on there anymore. There we go. 5 times 15, 20 times 100, 75 times. I think this is the numbers I said. Does someone want to calculate that for me here real quick? 5 times 15 plus 20 times 100 plus 75 times 3?
At 2,300.
Okay. And then in year 2, it's going to be 6 times 17 plus 21 times 110 plus 79 times 4. I'm not going to write this out just because I don't want to lose this board here, but I'm going to take Q2 times P2. So it's going to be 6 times 17 plus 21 times 110 plus 79 times 4. So whereas this is, okay. So whereas this one is Q1 times P1 and adding them all up. This is Q2, P2. But so now look at what happened here. I went up from 2,300 to 2,728 for the size of my economy. My economy has grown. But some of that change was the change in the price. So nominal GDP can change based on both the price changing and based on the quantity changing. What real GDP does is it holds the price constant. So real GDP in year 1 would be P1, Q1. Real GDP in year 2 would be P1, Q2. P times Q, P times Q. Meaning then that the only way real GDP can change is if there's a change in actual production. That's the only thing that will cause real GDP to change. Okay. No, So I'm just trying to figure out how to figure this out here. Oh, I know how to think. I'm getting there. Which puts us here. So the only way that the real GDP can increase is if the output is increasing. And I give you some kind of basic math here that you can kind of follow to see that. Okay. Just want to see. The reason why the GDP deflator, again, can be then useful for us is it can help us, the real GDP can be useful for us is if we use it to calculate a GDP deflator, which is then going to be my ratio of my nominal GDP to my real GDP. And if I multiply that by 100 and calculate percentage changes in those real GDPs, in those GDP deflators, that will give me an estimate of my change in prices. So, not that you would have remembered that all from Econ 131 from when you took principles. Hopefully some of that was familiar. You remembered some of that as a way to kind of understand this. So now where we go from this is, going back to our La Lima site, just as kind of in closing here. What it does is it sets us up for next week. So here's what you're going to notice now for next week's topic. Is I already have the slides. Now, what I did here as well is kind of when I did this discussion 2 years ago, I recorded myself talking about the slides. So I've posted that right here. I guess what I don't know is whether, I think when we had talked about this last week, I'm going to leave this video up there. You're going to be able to watch it. It's, in this case, it's a over 2-hour video that you could watch of people, of me mostly, talking about the slides. Which I don't think I need to repeat that necessarily again. What I'm hoping it's going to mean, though, that is then we can spend more time talking about things related to the topic, and then it could be on you to watch the slides, or maybe I just have to do, I'll do just some of the highlights of the slides, and then just kind of know that, you've got this video that you can watch the entire lecture as well. That's kind of here in the background. And again, these are all posted for almost all the topics. I did have, let's just pick a random one here. Yeah. So I do have them for most of the topics. I do have the video posted. So what that means is that next week when we meet, I'm going to try to focus on like some of the big themes. I'll look at some current data. And then hopefully too by next week we should have Bloomberg up and running, and we can talk about that more as well. I can hear that. That's going on. Okay. It'll be on all of you to tell me the quality of these videos. If these videos are not of good quality, someone should say something like, dude, just do the lectures again because these are really bad, You guys have to kind of tell me about that. I can kind of hear them and it makes sense to me, but if you just say it's not the same as the dynamic of you presenting it live, I can just go to that. I'm not trying to be lazy here by posting it. I'm just trying to be efficient with our time. So what that would mean is that for next week, when we get to topic 2, you got slides. You then have the video, the lecture I recorded 2 years ago, and then you would have the homework assignment, and then you would have the lecture that I record next week. So next week going forward, there'll be 4 things in each topic. Okay. That pretty much finishes what I wanted to say. The things you should be looking for is I'm going to start populating the things with the Bloomberg stuff. Hopefully we're going to be able to talk about that more next week because it's going to be up and running. The homework assignments, don't worry, they're not like things that are going to be due like on a weekly basis. It's just that the homework assignments will be due before we do the exam. So don't think you have to be doing too much right now, except just making sure you're keeping up with each topic as we're talking about it. Okay. Just like before, I will log off last. So, oh, you can see my, oh, it's kind of psychedelic, huh? The ceiling fan going off. Yeah, I'll log off last. So if you want to stay on and ask me a question, otherwise I'll just log off last. And then later tonight or tomorrow, I will upload this video to YouTube, this recording. Sounds good, everybody. Okay, I will see you. Some of you I'll see on Tuesday. Some of you I'll see next week on Thursday.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. See you. Bye. Again, I'll log off last. So just feel like if you want to log off. Otherwise, ask away if you have any questions.
I have a question, sorry.
Sure, Chance, no worries.
Where's the syllabus? Like, I don't see it on Lima, so I was just wondering like, how I can access that.
Yep, let me try to show you here.
I know there's like a button, and then I
Nope, I'll show you.
Module, yep. I was like, where is that?
Nope, you're not going to see it in modules here. Let me show you. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So if you go back to tools, we should have it, yep, here under syllabus. So there's under tools, there's a tab called syllabus. Click on that, and you should be able to see it here.
I'm going to check right now because I went and...
You make sure...
I couldn't see it, but...
Is it there?
1 second, sorry.
Yep, no worries, no worries.
Use. It is there now.
Oh, perfect. No, it's great. No, it's good. That's just good.
Like every day, I was like, oh, maybe it's here today. I guess not.
No, you should totally feel like you don't have to feel like you're like stepping on eggshells. If you're expecting something and you're not seeing it, or you want it, like, or I'm just forgetting to do it. The only way sometimes I'm going to know that something is not working is if someone says something, or and to, you know, for you to write me an email, I mean, I can usually reply to an email super duper fast. So, you know, just send an email. It probably ends a lot more pain than checking every day to see if I posted a syllabus.
I know, but it, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal.
I know, it's not, but you know, it's an easy problem to solve.
Yeah. And then I have another question because I'm kind of confused. Sure. I know the other students have had your class, but I haven't, so I'm not too sure.
So here's what I can, oh, go on, sorry.
Oh, just like when I was registering for classes, like I was kind of confused because it seems like every professor I have registered for, you know, has like a certain time range of the class, but everyone seems to be going out of that range, and I'm not sure. You mean
like how long the lecture is going, you mean? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like
oh yeah. So the reason why that's happening, just on an informal basis, what they had to do was they made the schedule, when they made the schedule back in the spring semester, Then they thought, oh, everyone's just going to come back and we'll just do our normal amount of online classes. Then when the summer happened and they're like, oh, we're not even going to be able to do in person, then they switched 80-minute classes because they couldn't fit everyone in every class. They had to make the 80-minute classes into 50-minute classes and then switch people in and out of the same room. But most professors aren't going to remake all their lectures to go from 80 minutes to 50 minutes. So most of them are just probably still lecturing 80 minutes because that's what they're used to doing. You know, like technically this class is supposed to go from like, 5 to 5:55, and then I'm supposed to do virtual the rest of the time. Well, I'm just going to lecture as if it's a normal class, right? So I expect with a lot of your classes, most of those professors are doing the same thing. They're not going to remake their class just because of this 1 or 2 semesters where things are weird and screwy. That's my general sense of why things are probably ending up that way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was just confused because you know how like on Star they're saying,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we do this so you make sure there's no overlap of classes. I'm like, God, I feel bad for the other students who
No,
have
yeah, I mean,
class.
I suspect that there is probably a lot of overlap. I mean, I know I have some students where they're saying they have a Zoom call at the same time as class. No, mommy went to go get a
Cake?
No, she went to get a boba drink because it's her birthday and she gets a free one for her birthday. Yeah, so yeah, I suspect there's other classes where exactly that same thing is happening.
Okay, sounds good.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does. I was just really confused.
No, but don't worry too much. I mean, I know that like I'm suspect that all the classes at UH are having the same kind of thing going on. They're all kind of you know, we don't exactly know what the format is, and again, most professors probably don't want to change too much just for a 1 or 2 semester anomaly. But if you're finding that because you you were at LCC before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you remember who you had when you took econ? Did you have Gollum and Kaligi, or did you have do you remember who you had or no? It's all right if you don't.
I did all online. Sorry, give me just 1 second. I like
Yeah,
saved
sure.
all the syllabuses. That's why like I like my syllabus so I can have it
Oh, of course, yeah.
my Google Drive and just
Yeah.
do that. What's it? Oh my gosh.
It would have been 120, would have taken maybe, or 130, or definitely 131.
Yeah, when I did macro.
I might guess Gollum.
Oh, it was Gollum. Yeah, it was Gollum. That was online.
Yep. So, you know, I know he makes some videos, but he stays pretty close to the textbook. If you want, I can send you a link to all of my videos. I made a lot of videos for when people took me for 131. So if ever you're kind of missing something, you can just always get back to it. But, you know, really the point of today was to kind of get everyone on the same page. And I know some things you might be like, I kind of remember that phrase, but I don't exactly remember it. That's fine. Like, even if you're feeling like that. The only point where I'd say get concerned is if, like, nothing I talked about today made any sense at all, then I would say you're going to have to do a little bit more background work. But at least if things were kind of familiar, I think you're going to be okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm good. Thank you
Okay. So let me know, but send me an email or let me know if you want me to send you a link to the videos I give to people when they take my 131 class.
I think I'm okay. I still have all of his like PDFs because he uploaded PDFs of every chapter. So I just saved them to my Google Drive.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. That sounds good. Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay, take care.
Okay,
bye.